A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. I'm Ritwika Gupta. Now, India's workplace landscape is undergoing a fundamental shift. At the center of this transformation is office space solutions. How is the flexible workspace market evolving? How tech, public markets and changing work cultures are shaping the future of offices in India? In conversation tonight with Amit Ramani, Chairman and Managing Director, Office Space Solutions. Amit, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Ritwika, for having me on the show.
So, Amit, to begin with, tell us, how do you assess the evolution and the current maturity of India's flexible workspace market?
So, Ritwika, the whole journey of flex probably started in the world about 15 years back, right, in 2010 and 11. In India, it started green shoots in 2014 and 15. That's when we also started Awfis about 10 years ago. Initially, when the whole evolution was happening, flex was a great solutioning for startups and SMEs of the country because of the hassle of finding your space, then obviously fitting it out and then maintaining it. It made a lot of sense for smaller companies to do this. And then between 2015 and 2020, essentially, this was adopted largely by SMEs, mid-sized corporate, startups, and freelancers, right? The corporate adoption or the enterprise adoption was very small. And as a result, the industry had certain scale. When COVID hit in March of 2020, essentially, the total industry size was about 25 million odd square feet, right? Now, when COVID hit, it changed the paradigm because the larger companies were hit by the challenges of speed, because now instead of doing one location, they had to do probably 10 because of distributed and hybrid work. They not only had to do it in one city, they could now also look at tier 2 cities. A lot of people went back into tier 2 cities. So obviously the ability to execute became important. A lot of uncertainty came into the equation. So, people were not sure if people are going to come back, how many days are they going to come back. And as a result, what ended up happening was flexibility became core. And then people started thinking that this is not my core, right? Doing a workplace infrastructure is not my core. So why don't I take my investment and put it towards my own business and let some partner or the flex partner kind of take my capital investment and make it into an operating expense for me, right? So these are three primary reasons why this industry kind of took off. And when the larger enterprises started coming in, the larger enterprises obviously brought scale in terms of both cohort, in terms of longevity of the contract, and the whole concept of managed office kind of started taking mainstream. And a lot of the industry today is established on the back of managed office primarily, which is essentially you take up a space for somebody else, fit it out and give it to them, and essentially run it and manage it for them. Now, as a result, the industry expanded, and today we are by end of 2025, the total industry, the flex industry, has grown to almost 100 million square feet, right? So, which is a huge bump. In terms of the industry growth over the last 6 quarters, the flex has been almost 20% of all commercial leasing, right? Earlier, ITS used to be about 35 to 40%. Now, flex is number 2 when it comes to commercial real estate leasing. And that's on back of very, very strong demand. And as a result, the industry continues to expand. Today, obviously, we got some tailwinds with enterprises coming in. But after the GCCs started coming in, the first time GCCs that started expanding into India, adding 25 to 30 every quarter, new GCCs are coming to India. It is projected. And again, clearly these are things which are established on some of the reports that are out there from our international property consultants, is that the flex industry would take up about 50 to 60% of all GCC demand that's coming into the country, especially the first time GCC demand, because they are again looking for flexibility, they are looking for speed, and they are obviously not looking to invest capital into a new country. And the same logic is getting applied, and the flex industry is projected to grow to almost 3 times our size, from 100 to almost 300 million square feet in the next 5 to 6 years. So that's been the flex journey in India.
Now, I understand Office operates across co-working as well as enterprise solutions. So how do you balance focus versus scale across a diversified portfolio?
Yeah, so Ritika, we were very clear from day one that if we were going to create a business, it has to be on the back of a long-term, essentially establishing a long-term business that continues to run through multiple decades. And I think for that we took a very different approach, and we said if we need to basically want to be the HDFC of co-working, you need to have a few tenets that basically need to go into the whole business model for it to be successful. And hence, first, the network became important for us, right? So today, with about 250 locations, 19 cities, 60 plus micro markets, we are the single largest network, right? So now I can access every type of demand that exists for a commercial workplace user. Second, we needed to have a tiering, right? So I want a customer that is willing to pay 10,000 rupees a seat per month. I also want a customer at 12,000. I also want a customer at 18,000, right? So for that, we did the tiering. We have a flagship product, which today constitutes about 89% of our portfolio. And essentially, we launched Office Gold about roughly 3 years, 3.5 years back. And now we, about a year back, launched Elite. So today, out of the total portfolio of 250, about 26, 21 gold and 5 elite centers are available. Third, we said, well, we have to make sure that the enterprises kind of give us the opportunity. And as a result, over the last 18 months, we went into curating a large platform. And that platform essentially allowed us to go after large enterprises to essentially service their requirements. When we started, we said, well, we will have to look at what do enterprises really want. The enterprises require speed, and enterprises require quality of design. And hence we built that whole engine to be able to service. And hence today, if I look at it, 70% of our business comes from co-working, about 30% comes from managed office. And the managed office business essentially is where the cohort sizes obviously are larger. Today, the business, the way it plays out is essentially we have co-working, we have managed office. We also started about roughly 3 years back our design and build portfolio. Design and build essentially is nothing but the client taking up the space, we providing that as a service, and then essentially handing over the keys and walking away from the facility. We then expanded the platform. We said if we have to service the complete ecosystem for our clients, then we need to be able to service each of their requirements from a workplace standpoint. So we added essentially IT services under Office Tech Lab. We added F&B for cafeteria management under Office Cafe. We added mobility under our partnership with Ecos Mobility for transportation. We also launched mobility solutions, which are meeting room by the hour, seat by the day. We launched that as well. And then finally, we launched Frame by Office, which is basically a furniture division. So today, anything that a enterprise user requires is available under one integrated platform that we can service them with.
So post IPO, how do you see public market scrutiny influencing business models in the co-working and workplace management industry?
So clearly, I think the industry went through its cycles, right? When some of the global, markets could not absorb any co-working players, there were a lot of negativity around the whole industry till about 2000, I would say 1920. When two things happened, the global giant kind of went bankrupt, and then, obviously, the COVID happened. So industry had a lot of negative connotations around it. I think India acted very differently, and we were obviously the pole bearers of, going public. We were one of the first ones to do it successfully in the world. We were 108 times oversubscribed for our issue. So I think clearly, we were one of the change parameters for the industry itself. Now, today, obviously, in any sunrise sector, you will have the investor community understanding the differences, the nuances between the industry players. We obviously operate an asset-light managed aggregation model, which is very different than what's done in the world, where people take straight lease and then obviously find tenants and then find the demand and essentially run the business. So in the public domain, as a result, what has happened is transparency has become very, very clear. Governance is extremely critical. co-working industry, which was not very well understood, is now with 4 operators being listed, is very well understood. The investor community understands it very well, and I think it is just setting the platform for this industry to become extremely large in this country. As I said, 100 million square feet could end up being 300 million. The top 5-6 operators in the country today deliver almost 65% of the demand in the country. So I think as a result of the listing, the industry is very well understood, and the future of the industry looks very, very bright.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. Tonight we are spotlighting India's way of working and how that's changing, in conversation with Amit Ramani, Chairman and Managing Director, Office Space Solutions. Now, Tier 2 cities are also emerging as serious business hubs. What needs to go right for these markets to become sustainably profitable for workspace operators like yours?
So a few different items, Ritwika. I think clearly, if we look at the Tier 2 industry, they came into the forefront post-COVID, right? When people who were staying in Tier 1 cities for their livelihood went back to Tier 2 cities to be closer to their families. They understood that cities had evolved. A city like Jaipur could provide a lot better, lifestyle, infrastructure, entertainment, etc. And people experience that lifestyle. And as a result, the Tier 2 city came into the mainstream. Now, today, what Tier 2 really requires is a few different things. One, it requires quality supply, compliant quality supply, so that large companies, including GCCs and multinationals, can open up centers there. Second, they require policies which basically allow people to do ease of doing business. Obviously, Tier 1 cities have evolved. They've gotten much better. I think the Tier 2 cities need to do that. Third is incentives, right? Clearly, if you look at the policies of Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka or Maharashtra around GCCs, or the incentives that they're giving for setting up new infrastructure, export-oriented services unit, etc., then clearly the incentives make a huge difference. I think these Tier 2 cities will need to follow a similar kind of format. And then finally, the infrastructure and the educational infrastructure, the road infrastructure, the wireless IT infrastructure, all of that has to keep pace with the growth. So if these things are taken care of, I think the Tier 2 journey will be very, very strong as Tier 1 that has happened over the last 25, 30 years in India.
So, Amit, tell us what metrics truly define success in the flexible workspace business? Is it occupancy or client stickiness?
So, Ritwika, it's a combination of various factors, right? I think both that occupancy as well as client stickiness are important in their own right. Clearly, occupancy plays a big role. When you are opening up a center, the initial occupancy buildup becomes very important, because it essentially makes the quicker you fill up the center, the higher your margins would be, right? And you would obviously be able to get a better payback of your investment the sooner you're able to build occupancy. Once the occupancy stabilizes, let's say, which in our case is usually 85 to 90% for a given center, the retention becomes important, right? Because if you absolutely have to continue to fill the bucket again and again, you will have higher sales costs, you will have higher, operational costs, you will have, higher burn if the occupancy drops and churn happens, etc. So for us, building occupancy initial days is very, very important, and to keep it consistent. After a point, retention of the client becomes a forefront. And then ultimately, it's about the margins that we are able to make.
Amit, hybrid work is now mainstream. How should companies rethink office spaces to remain relevant, productive, and culturally strong?
Hybrid completely changed how companies were looking at their workspace, right? So I think a few different dimensions need to be thought about when companies are designing for the hybrid workforce. One, clearly the center has to be a destination. It cannot be one size fits all. Everybody sits on a specific desk. It has to be a place where when I need to do heads down work, I have me space. When I need to collaborate, I need to have we space. And when I need to interact with my partners or people who are on virtual formats, I should have us space, right? So all of this kind of the space needs to be agile enough to kind of feel that it is enabling the hybrid work, right? Second, clearly efficiency, right? And the with technology and AI coming into play, I think the future of workspace would look like where AI agentic robots and human beings will coexist. So the space has to be such that it has to be able to evolve and be efficient enough that it kind of learns with the users and is able to adapt to the users and respond. The third piece of it is flexibility. We do not know what the future will look like. Nobody can predict, how many, how AI agentic robots and human beings will coexist. But clearly, it is here to stay. Now, if it is here to stay, then my workspace, because it's unpredictable, has to be flexible enough so that I can build flexibility on the go. And clearly, the differentiator for a lot of people in hybrid work would be that the culture has to be embedded. So even if I'm asked to come, let's say 1 to 3 days a week to the office, my culture of the organization has to be so embedded into the workspace that I'm able to experience it the moment I enter that space. Because now I'm not coming 5 days a week. I'm not interacting with my colleagues only in a face-to-face format. So I think these four things would be very important for hybrid workplace to succeed.
And what role will technology and data play in the next phase of workplace management?
For us, a lot of the technology today evolving is around AI and IoT. And that is where we are able to predict the usage of the center. We are able to do energy management. We are able to do facility management faster. We are able to be more efficient. When it comes to our large customers, our B2B enterprise customers, we are able to share a lot of the employee data, how people use, what is the kind of food that they eat, what is the pattern that they follow. All of this data we are able to share back with our larger customers.
Right.
So their technology plays the role. And all of this goes into understanding user better and understanding how we can make people more productive. Ultimately, that's the reason that the workspace exists. On our own end, we have now started using AI and data analytics for designing our centers. We're taking feedback and putting it into our learnings from the past and essentially developing models where we can do essentially our designs faster. We can develop designs which are much closer to what the clients are looking for, and essentially are able to deliver an outcome which is much, much closer to what the customer expects in a much faster fashion.
As a first-generation entrepreneur leading a listed company, how has your leadership approach evolved from the startup phase to institutional scale?
So, Ritwika, I think when we initially started, you are looking and experimenting with a lot of different dimensions. You are trying to make a proof of concept. You're trying to learn from your mistakes. You're trying to do multiple iterations of it till you get the model right. Right. So it took us almost, I would say, till about COVID. We have 50 locations, and it took us about 5 years to figure out what model on the supply side, or what model on the demand side, what is the cohort side, what are the kind of customers, how do you attract them, set up the teams, etc. So we did a lot of that heavy lifting in the first 5 years, and by 2020 we were sure that this model works, right? And model can be at a certain scale, could deliver profitability. So in a very disciplined approach, we just started expanding our footprint across India. And then by the time in 2023, when we decided that we were going to go public, a year's preparation had to be taken, we started behaving like a publicly listed company. And we started essentially behaving on a quarter-on-quarter basis. We started expecting our teams to be much more disciplined, much more committed to the numbers, much more understanding of what metrics mean, what are the important metrics. All of that we put in place. And because of that years-long preparation, when we went public, we were able to, essentially flow with the opportunity. And now today, what we are trying to do is essentially make sure that the business itself is institutionalized to a level. There are enough and more leaders in the company that it can run irrespective of any one of us being there or not. Right? And so institutionalization is happening to ensure that all the different level of talent is upgraded to a level where the businesses, all of these businesses that we have established and are in the process of establishing, continue to run irrespective of the leadership there.
So looking 10 years ahead, what should India's workplace ecosystem look like? And what role do you want Awfis to play in shaping that future?
Yeah, so I think India sits at a very, very interesting place. India is one of the most under commercialized markets in the world. All of India is about 1 billion square feet. Just the New York 6 boroughs are almost 4.2 billion square feet. So clearly, I think there's a lot of commercialization that's going to happen. Second, urbanization is happening. About 50% of India will live by 2042, will live in the 7, 8 metro cities, essentially. Tier 2 cities are taking off in a big way across Jaipur, Bhubaneswar. So I think India growth story is intact and very strong in my view. If the growth happens, then commercial real estate certainly does well because urbanization and services add to that element. If commercial real estate does well, flex will do well, right? So I think the next 10 years are the decade for flex. Next 10 years, what flex is today, we probably even can't predict what it will be in 10 years. I think a lot of technology will get integrated.
Right.
I think AI will play a big role in the next 10 years in the flex space itself. I personally believe that the autonomous office will happen just like we have an autonomous car today, which does everything on its own. You just need to sit in it and tell where you want to go. So it'll be the same thing. You'll show up for work and there will be an autonomous office which will evolve around you, essentially adapt to your needs, adapt to your me time, we time, us time, etc. And the whole environment will transform on its own. And I think the flex industry, with its innovative approach, will be the pole bearer for it. And finally, I think obviously, global capability centers are the future of the next decade. We want to be the number one operator that provides that delivery to our global capability center partners. Today, we have close to about 10 first-time GCCs with us. Obviously, 20 plus are being added every quarter. We want to be the market leader in providing services to GCCs in the next decade.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Amit. This was a great conversation.
Thank you, Ritwika.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.